Aha, okay, okay.
Yeah. So, Emma, would you like to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
You tried to just murder me just now.
Okay,
Oh my
Emma.
God.
You over there choking.
Yes, I'm dying. Okay, so
Welcome to Star Stories and Life, where we talk about,
stars, stories, and life.
of course. And we will start with, of course, the astrology report as usual and I do that. I'm Shinjini. And then we will move on to our tarot reading, which will be done by Emma.
Yes.
So um, there's not a lot starting or happening this week, but what is very important to know is that we are already in the beginning of the eclipse season. So there are a lot of eclipses that are going to happen until the 5th of July. So we've already had our first lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, which happened on June 5th. It was, the it indicated the finishing of stuff, right? Because as I was telling you, that lunar eclipse is a jacked up full moon. So completions, things getting over is what was a lunar eclipse all about. Um, that is also the time when I don't want to say realms or the worlds are all, linked.
Yeah.
The veil between worlds is very, very thin. So it was a very, very magical moment that happened on June 5th. I hope that it was very meaningful for you. The thing is that the effects are still going to be there. So there are more eclipses coming in the towards the end of June, I think around 20th. And then finally, with the lunar eclipse, we will close the eclipse season, which is on July 5th. So definitely we are in the season. A lot of changes are happening, completions, beginnings. Um, what is very notable about this week is the meeting of Mars and Neptune in Pisces. Let me check if that's correct. Yes, the meeting of Mars and Neptune in Pisces. So, of course, depending on what house Pisces is in your birth chart, things will be taking changes will happen in that part of your life. But I would say this represents, um, in general, I would say this definitely represents heightened emotions for sure. But I would also ask our viewers and listeners to be very careful right now when it comes to believing something to be real. Okay, so things might seem a little, not so clear. Things might seem confusing. There's a lot of elements of, delusion and cloudiness that's going on right now. So depending on where this is happening in your birth chart, for example, if this is happening in your sixth house, then I would say a lot of changes are happening when it comes to your workplace, right? So I would say be very careful of what your supervisor or your coworkers are saying to you right now, because they might mislead you intentionally or unintentionally. This could mean job loss, because Neptune in a particular house can mean loss or a miracle. These are the two extremes. So will you be washed by miracle or will you be washed by loss? Who knows? However, this energy is also an energy of miraculous healing. So whatever happens, loss or gain, this is this was much required. This will definitely push you into action, to do things for yourself. So this is just an example. If Mars and Neptune is meeting in your sixth house, if it's meeting in your seventh house, which seventh house is the house of marriage and your partnerships, and so changes are happening there. So what happens when Mars meets Neptune is that Mars will accelerate whatever is happening in that house right now with Neptune being there. Okay, so whatever was happening, you've already been feeling, Neptune in Pisces, this, grand delusions and, living in fantasy. So what Mars will do is like Mars will really push whatever Neptune has been trying to do in your house, right? So things will unfold itself. And if it's happening in your seventh house, it could be, and this is just an example, right? It could be maybe, you're breaking up, or maybe this relationship is revealing itself to you, or, stuff like that. Same thing with second house. It can be, in your house of finances. It could be in the house of your unconscious mind. It could be the house of your career. So you have to check in your birth chart where this is happening, and these delusions are possible over there, and the losses are possible over there. But this, as I'm saying, I would finally close off the report by saying that this is required for your spiritual growth. This is required for healing. So whatever happens in this house of yours, it's required. So I would say, if you see it happening, know that it is for your healing, and you have the tools, you have the resources to manage this.
Okay, that's hopeful. That's hopeful. So that's good. All right, so the cards. Today I'm using these knockoff Prismavision tarot cards that I have, because they're a bit more dramatic than my other decks. But they are a knockoff. They're a Chinese knockoff that I didn't know was a knockoff when I bought it. So the card I pulled for love is the Eight of Cups. As you can see here, it's very, it's a lot. There's a lot going on. So the Eight of Cups is a card that is very much about, when it's up, it's about escapism and disappointment. But right now that it's reversed, it's about hopelessness and walking away. So since we're talking about love, there's a lot of relationships that are going to be ending. Many relationships are going to be ending, and it's going to feel very, you're going to feel adrift. You're going to feel like you don't have a purpose for a while, but you just have to think that, more than likely this is a good thing for you right now, as you were saying.
Absolutely.
with your report, right? And then finances, we have a nice sword here in reverse. So many swords, my gosh. So the sword, the ace, this is the Ace of Swords in reverse, is confusion and chaos. So yeah, so there's going to be a lot happening when it comes to your financial situation. Am I going to have enough money? Am I not going to have enough money? It's not going to be clear, but more than likely the answer is yes. You just have to pay attention to where your money's going.
Absolutely.
So
this is so accurate too, because as we know that Venus is retrograde right now.
Yeah.
So Venus, when it goes retrograde, in whichever house it's going retrograde in your birth chart, we have to hold things off a bit, like not going through any big changes when it comes to our beauty or money, just like to kind of see where our money is coming from, if that's something that we love, do we need to make these changes? So I completely agree with you. Like, things might not be abundant at the moment, but it's temporary, because it's time for you to see if this is what you love, if this is what you're meant to do. So after the review period is over, which will be, towards July, things will become clearer with when it comes to money.
Yes, exactly. And now finally, health. I pulled only one card, and we have the Knight of Swords. As you can see, this card, we have the monster.
Somebody's getting eaten.
He's gonna get eaten, but he's stabbing the goose in the mouth. And the knight, right? Yeah. So the knight he's like, and action-oriented cards. Like, we're doing things are happening. We might be a little like hasty. We need to like step back a little bit. But things are happening. We're making changes when it comes to global health. Hi, Motsi. Which I think is something we talked about last week, where it's like the changes that each of us individually are making in our own lives, always wearing a mask, always washing your hands when you get home, carrying sanitizer with you wherever you go in case you have to touch an ATM. These kinds of changes that we've been making are, actions that we have taken to take care of our own health. And so that is what's happening right now. Everyone is starting to get into the rhythm of doing these extra things that they normally do. So that's what I think. And I didn't feel like any pull out another one. So I think that's basically all the cards want to tell us.
Yeah. I feel like that's where we are heading to.
Mm-hmm.
And just energy wise, I'm feeling, yes, a lot of beginnings and endings are happening. But it might, people who do not like change, none of us like change, but some people have different types of, reactions towards it. Some people have softer reactions. Some people have, not so soft reactions. Yeah. So I would say it might seem hard. It might, and no big change is, painless. So it might seem hard on the surface. It might be, it bring a lot of uncomfortable feelings, but this is good for you. This is what I can say. The blessings are there. The blessings are coming through the form of endings and new beginnings. And we just need to see it as it is instead of trying to give our own meaning to it. Like, oh, this is a loss or this is a gain. Not really. It's all a part of life and they're all blessings right now.
Yes, I agree. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Star Stories in Life, where we have an awesome guest star, our friend, Mark. Say hi, Mark. And then we have our co-host.
Shinjini.
Yes, I am here.
Yes,
I was thinking maybe Mark can introduce himself a little bit. What do you do, Mark? Where are you from?
I'm doing an introduction. Okay, well, I'm Mark Mercado Miller. I'm from Jamaica, here in Tijuana as well with you guys, Shinjini and Emma. And I am a French and English teacher here for the past, it's going to be 4 years soon. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay.
Did you say you're from Jamaica?
I am. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica. That's our capital. Yeah, but I mostly grew up on the North Coast still, in Ocho Rios, and I went to high school there, and then I went back to Kingston for university studies, and then I also went back to the North Coast for about 5 years. I was there working in tourism. Mm-hmm. So kind of like back and forth.
So which countries have you been to, Mark?
I've been to France, Belgium, Panama, Cuba, Dominican Republic, and now I am in Mexico.
Wow.
Yes, and hopefully soon. I actually still want to see Colombia because that was my intention. Before living in Mexico, my intention was to get a job in Medellin, Colombia, and move there. But fate would have it that a school in Mexico contact me first, give me an interview first, and hire me first. Other schools did contact me, but things went south once they heard I was from Jamaica. So, yeah, I had to go back to the drawing board and try again, and then Mexico gave me the job. So here I am.
Oh, it's so good to have you, Mark. So, to our viewers and listeners, today we are going to talk about what everybody's talking about, which is the movement of Black Lives Matter.
Oh my God.
So, Emma, can you tell us, what are we talking about today exactly, and why?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Okay, so I'm sure by now, as of today, which is June 7th when we're recording, Everybody knows that the entire world, except for people who do not have internet, know that. I mean, even the Amish know, so that's where we're
You see that?
That it's been basically almost a war zone in the U.S. because of basically police brutality going just that nudge too far, right? It's the straw that broke the camel's back, basically.
Absolutely.
What we just saw happen, and we're seeing all of the fallout that's happening because of that. We have peaceful protests that are turning into riots, peaceful protests that stay as peaceful protests, and riots that just kind of happen. We've seen that as well. And it's all in the idea of the Black Lives Matter movement of trying to get, well, basically, rights for people of color. All colors is what it's been mostly indicating. So I think that's like the base of it. There's like so much already reported. There's so much information that you can go and find about how it started, about why it started. There's a giant list of names.
Right.
And I think mostly for us, in particular for our podcast, we decided to not join other podcasts in doing the blackout for the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's more important to speak than to take solidarity, I think.
Absolutely, because it's been literally blacking out the important information that protesters need right now. With the hashtag Black Lives Matter. So I would like to start off by kind of giving an idea.
Ginny,
Sure.
I just say something quickly. Like Emma said, the straw that broke the camel's back, which is something I've been hearing a lot recently. But with that said, and definitely it's something that's become a big thing. You know, the video. It's just that I do believe it's always been there, or it's been said that it's always been there. It's just that it was being filmed this time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second to that, the guy uttered, "I can't breathe," and any human would hear a sentence like that, and it would touch you somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and if it doesn't,
to life,
you're
right?
probably denying it. If it doesn't touch you, you're probably denying it, or okay, you are ruthless. And third of all, you know, to see the photo, the video, to see a knee in the neck and see 3 other agents stand by and allow that, which somebody recently, a friend of mine who is in Japan, said, in Japan, what's happened is it's not only the movement, but it's also to see that an Asian guy was amongst them, was in the midst of the 4. For them, it's like, oh, one of us, you know, stood there and allowed that to happen. Stood there and allowed that to happen. I don't know if he's Japanese, but the point is he's obviously Asian, and for them, it's a big deal over there.
Well, Asians are very racist to Black people too. They always have been. I know that because I'm from Asia. And horrible things have happened in India. I do remember certain stories coming from New Delhi, I think, which is the capital city of India, where Black people have always been instigated, provoked all the time for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I personally have had this experience where I was dating somebody from, what is the name of the place? I was dating somebody from, oh my God, I blocked out.
While you think about it, the point here though is, while she thinks about it, technology.
Ghana,
technology.
Yes. Sorry, you were saying?
Technology, the fact that, you know, cameras are now recording these moments. You know, I'm sure it's always happening, it's always happened, it continues to happen, but the world just doesn't get to see it, you know. But someone this time caught it. I mean, I'm sure there are other videos that have surfaced.
Yeah, absolutely. Like now that things are getting recorded, you know, it's becoming even, but you know, what bothers me is that why were people not believing Black people in the first place? Like when there were no videos and Black people were complaining that how the police mistreat them every day. I don't think people took it really seriously.
No.
But the Black Lives
For
Matter
several
movement
reasons.
is only 6 years old.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's a recent thing. I didn't even
Yeah,
realize that. Hmm.
it's only
I
six
don't know.
years
Maybe
old.
they've not been believed because for a long time, maybe black people and everything and anything and everything black in this world is considered bad, and even Hollywood shows that. People see a particular image on television and they run with that, they go with that. And if a cop says, oh, he attacked me first, he made after me first, and it was all an act of self-defense, they will quickly disregard the person who was taken in under arrest and believe the cop. However, with this video you'll see that this guy was definitely helpless. He was laying there, had a knee in his neck. There's no way he was a threat to him and the other three agents that were with him on duty. Had the video not been there, and this cop said that he felt like his life was in danger because he made after him with a fist or God knows what, and people just be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because, of hundreds of years of propaganda, hundreds of years of this constant feeding through culture, pop culture, education, that somehow a black skin is inferior, and it just makes you like less of a human being. And that's something that's very, very subtle, that's very subconscious. That's why a lot of people get really offended when you call them out on their discriminatory tendencies or their bigotry. And they're like, I'm not racist because I have a black friend, or I'm not racist because I have black nephews and nieces. So yeah, it doesn't exempt you from that discriminatory tendency.
But you know what? Having one black friend or one black colleague or knowing one black person doesn't say, okay, there isn't any racism at all. Because what I found is a lot of things these days include one black person to calm everybody else down, but that black person is not allowed to be a leader, or it isn't allowed to have 3, 4, 5 black people in a cast. Talking about movies, for example, you see one black person cast in, and to my understanding is so people won't say that they're racist. Now, it's not that you're asking for the entire cast to be white, but it is there's obviously a huge percentage in how many Asians are included in the movie, how many black people are included in the movie for a nation that says that it's multicultural.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was saying that how Asians have always been racist towards black people, and it includes India and China. So the example that I was going to give is that I was dating this guy from Ghana. He was, an athlete. At that time, he was in Calcutta playing in some football league. So he was scared of being seen with me. And first of all, I initially I thought it was like, something, he's a douchebag. But eventually he opened up and he said that he's scared because one of his friends were dating this Indian girl, and the neighbors got the police and beat that guy up in his apartment because black people cannot date their women, So it's horrible. Like that was like the first time I actually heard somebody who was close to me say something which was so traumatic in a way, and it really hurt me. So, and I've also heard the same things in China. There are so many news that come out from that country where they are constantly persecuting black people as these untouchables. I think recently a news came out too with this COVID-19 thing going on. People have been like putting signs on their shops and restaurants saying that black people not allowed and stuff like that. So these things are still happening, and it's heartbreaking. And what I would like to bring our attention to today is, so Black Lives Matter movement officially has been active for 6 years now, since Trayvon Martin died. That's what triggered this whole movement. So Trayvon Martin was this black person who was, unnecessarily killed by this policeman called George Zimmerman. So that's how it all started, and we are 6 years in the running with Black Lives Matter movement. So what I would like us to talk about especially is that what would the success of this movement look like? So this is a question that I have for you, Mark. So before you answer that, I would like to kind of tell you what Black Lives Matter movement says about their primary goal is that they want to see a democracy that is more representative of Black communities in America. So because they're based in America, so they used America. But can you tell me, Mark, what it would be, how your daily life would be different if Black Lives Matter movement was successful and there was democracy which was more representative of Black communities?
My personal life?
Yes, in your personal life and also in democracy, how it would look like.
It would mean that, because to my understanding is that Black people in the States are probably seen as numbers, and that's it. When they were allowed to vote, it was like, oh, they'll add numbers to our votes, you know? So that would mean that within their parties and amongst themselves, they would not see the Black community so much anymore as second-class citizens, because I'm of the impression that, and it's recently I've realized it, that not everybody there is equal. It's not been spoken about, you know, but it is a fact. And with that said, to my understanding, all of this is systematic. It's a system that's just there, and it takes a lot. It's going to take a lot for them to change it, if it ever gets changed. I'm of the hope that it will. As we can see also with the protests that's happened, it spanned outside of the US, which it's the first time in my entire life I've ever seen anything like that. Is it a good thing? I think it is. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to the US government, you know. Are they going to make some kind of change? Are they going to speak on the topic? Because I really don't think they are speaking on the matter. You know, you're not hearing much. You see all the protests, you see all the vandalism and looting that's happening, and you see a lot of people coming together, because you're seeing Latinos come together, a lot of whites come together, which is something I never expected to see. I thought I'd see predominantly Black people, but it's really good to see that there are a lot of white people and Latinos that are standing up with these Black people in these protests and saying enough is enough, you know, whether they have a friend or a colleague or somebody who is Black and they feel for these people. The point is, at the end of the day, it's going to be a decision that the government needs to understand that this is serious and we need to do something about it. It's been going on for far too long. For me personally, I mean, I've never been to the US. I don't live in the US. I've only experienced a few situations in which I could say, okay, this is definitely racism. And it happened here in Mexico, but they weren't Mexicans. You know, they were also Americans who were here. We're both foreigners in a foreign country. And they had the audacity to do things or say things to me out in public, you know.
And what happened? Like, why do you think they said that?
Well, I remember the first situation. I was standing by the bus station, the Subaru Baja that takes us to Tecate, because you used to teach there as well. And I had earphones in my ear listening to music. And I recall suddenly I saw this woman who seemed to have been talking to me, but I wasn't sure. But then she started circling me. So I removed my earphones to see, okay, is it a conversation with me, or is she saying something to me or about me? So then I removed them. She was speaking English, one. And then second, it was an American accent. And then third, is what she said. She had long sleeve and she started rolling them up. And then she started doing this. And she was like, look at me, I'm white, you fucking Black nigger, go back to Africa. And then she went on with a lot of other, you know, racist slurs, which I've never experienced. And that was the first time. This was about in 2018. And then the second to that, I was heading into the Banco Mero on Constitution Avenue downtown. And there was this tall white guy who was in full Black clothing and a puppy in his hand exiting. And he was like, get out of the way, you Black nigger. And then the third time, I was walking from the gym with Abigail, and there were two people coming towards us while we were going up. And again, the American accent and the slurs of nigger. This is like 2018, 2019 in a foreign country. You're obviously not from here. We aren't obviously either. You aren't because we identify your accent, apparently Americans. And we aren't, of course, everybody knows that. And you have the audacity to say things like
So
those
let me get
to
this
somebody
straight.
else
You
in a
were just
project.
minding your own business, listening to music, getting out of the gym, doing normal people stuff, and people just come to you and say you the N-word.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But that's not
And
weird. Like, if they had been in the US, they probably wouldn't have said it. It's because they were in Mexico.
I don't
And
know,
no one
because I've got a friend who
say
recently was
anything.
shaken by it as well, Emma. She was driving and she made a mistake in a turn, and that word was slurred to her, calling her stupid. You know.
Oh my god.
I don't know. I don't know. I've never been. I can't speak to that. But I do have friends who live there, and they give me accounts on several cases. I mean, things do happen here between Mexicans and myself, but it's subtle. It's in some situations passive, and I'm not saying it makes it okay, but maybe it's a little bit more. I can tolerate it a whole lot more than somebody outright just classing you down in like those three situations I had.
So, I mean, apart from this outright racism, calling the N-word and saying, I mean, it's just outright, right? It's out there. What about the racism that's kind of subconscious? Like, do you feel like you get treated differently because you're Black in any country, whether it's in Mexico or in a country that you've been to before?
Well, Mexico is that one country I've lived in the longest. And having been here for a while now, almost 4 years, I know for a fact, yes. To answer your question, yes, it happens, and it happens every day. Every day it goes. The most common I can tell you is taking the public transportation, where nobody sits next to me. And when somebody finally does sit next to me, is when all the seats in the back have been filled up, and okay, there's one seat left beside that guy. Okay, so I'm gonna have to sit there. This happens every day.
Wow.
So like when I take the bus to Tecate, the Super Baja, which Shinjin is a long ride, right? I mean, the good thing is I'm usually happy that I get the entire seat for myself. So I put my stuff there and I put my legs there because I know nobody will want to sit next to me. And normally nobody does. So I'm normally like, yay. And then on the other hand, you're kind of like, these people have got to be stupid though in 2019, 2020. You know?
What do you feel objectified in a way?
I do. Yeah. I don't know. When I feel the most objectified is when it comes on to sexual situations and topics. You know? Objectified in the sense where all of a sudden you're the best just because, okay, when you talk about sex, okay, you're Black, so you've got to have it all, you've got to be the best. Can we get raw on this?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a super crazy
Yeah.
channel.
I'm sure you've heard and you've known. I've shared a few stories with you, Shinjini, and of course, I knew you knew before. I mean, when it comes on to sex, Black people are considered to have the biggest dick, give the best sex, and a word that I get told all the time is aggressive, which is what everybody looks for, or for the most part, they're looking for. So they'll tell you, oh, Black people are known to be aggressive in bed, have the biggest dick, and the best sex ever, and so when people hit me up randomly or see me in the street, because even in the streets it happens, I do feel objectified,
Does that
especially when
bother you?
it bothers me. That's what I'm about to get to. It bothers me when I want more than just the sex. You would like to have something more, a relationship, a partner, somebody you can go to the cinema with, have a conversation. Let's go to a cafe and have drinks instead of, oh, let's go to your place. And you know what let's go to your place means,
Yeah.
right? And after even doing so or dating for a while, okay, so let's meet your friends. Can I get to meet your mom, meet your family? Things become sketchy. I've never been told straight out no. But after a few occasions, I started feeling like, okay, so I'm good enough to hang out with, to be sexual with, but when it comes on to meeting your family and meeting the people that are closest to you, then you seem to be beating around the bush where that's concerned. What's up with that? I don't know. I feel like there's a reason, and I have been told by a few other people that they don't want to introduce you to their friends and family because first question is going to be, okay, he's Black. Why are you dating a Black person? And most people will assume, oh, you're only with him because of the dick. You're only with him because he's black and what they say about black people. And then the second to that, they're going to be like, he's black. You don't want to be with him. Yeah. So the first time something similar happened was when Irid took me to she has some Colombian friends here who has a shopping business, and we were there, and that guy's daughter was there with her boyfriend and the kid, and a couple came by who knew these people, but they didn't know the daughter. And so the guy needed to introduce this couple to their daughter. I was standing next to the daughter and the kid, and the husband was away. So they introduced the girl as a daughter, and like they would say to her that, oh, she's here with her husband. They assumed I was the husband. No, to be honest, I didn't realize what was happening. It was Spanish. I just moved to Mexico. That was a few months after. But anyway, after this couple left, there was a huge conversation about that. And the conversation was, because Irid explained it to me, was, did you notice how their faces went from a total face change when they thought that I was the boyfriend? They thought I was the husband. And I'm like, really? And me being ignorant to all of what this meant, what this is and what it meant, I was like, why would they do that though? And then they explained to me that, well, it's because they thought she was with a black guy. You know, me coming from a society where this doesn't happen every day, I was kind of left there like, and so what? And this was one of the first instances in which I realized that my color is always going to be questioned. Who I get with is always going to be questioned. How I do things is always going to be questioned because of, you know.
Does this happen in Jamaica too? Like, do you get the same look?
Recently, like, no. I think it's because honestly, it's predominantly a black society. It's a black country. But what we do have is classism. I've been in tourism and I can speak to that. Where the person who looks like you, Shinjini, will get the front desk position, the manager position, and so anything that makes you have to come in contact with the tourist, the client, the guest.
The light skin thing, right?
Needs to be the one who deals with the tourists who are predominantly from the United States. Canada and Europe are predominantly from the United States. The point is, okay, so the black people in the back or the darker color in the back and people who are lighter, you need to be the ones who take the positions of anything or anyone who needs to deal with the guest.
So what do you think of this? Would you say that this is kind of like internalized racism? Like black people and people of color have been, subject to so much racism for hundreds of years. Do you think this is something that we have internalized?
Yes,
people have been telling us through different mediums like culture and education.
I think so. I really do think it's internalized. I think a lot of Hollywood is sold, and it's what's sold in Hollywood. Can we change it? I think we can. It takes a lot of education. You know, we need to educate people, but especially begin with children. But it's also going to be difficult. It's not going to be something that you can say, let's do this, and we'll start seeing a change in a decade or 2 decades. It is possible, but it comes with its challenges. For example, I found out that where business is concerned, people think a lot about their status and their money. But guess what? In business, who buys? It's predominantly the rich. And who's predominantly rich? The lighter skinned people and the white people. Okay, so it means, okay, if you're going to change the way you market your products and sell your things, it comes with a lot of risk. Because if you start putting people who they can't identify with it, then you run the risk of losing business, probably, right? So people normally, things that appeal to people normally is, other things and people that they can identify with. But if all of a sudden you change that, then people start losing that connection. And this is what I think a lot of people in the business, like in fashion, for example, television, even managers, if you go to a bank, to my understanding, people prefer to see a lighter skinned person or a white person because for some reason you trust somebody in a blue suit who is light in complexion or white than a black person.
Yes, I had something to say about that. So I don't think that we should depend on or expect the media or, and when I say media, I mean, everything that we see on screen nowadays, everything that we consume, for them to change. That's not going to happen. And for them for us to expect them to change so that, Black lives do matter. I don't think that's the route. The change needs this transformation where everybody is considered a human being, especially Black people, needs to happen in grassroots level, which is, I agree with you, Mark, when you said education. And also in political systems, there needs to be changes in political systems in our democracies, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. It has to happen from people who are in the grassroots, and then it will eventually reflect in the media. That's what I think. So yes, I mean, to expect or blame the media for not being representative of what we think needs to happen. I mean, yeah, that's important, but at the same time, let's really look for how we can make those changes in grassroots level in our communities. Talking about, calling people out, our friends, our family members, when they are being discriminatory, when they are, making a remark that is racist. I think we need to call them out and ask them to be respectful, and they would know that this is not something that is not okay. And eventually, with time, there will come a generational change when we will, I think, consider people of color as human beings. So yes, I think those changes need to happen and on a very base level. And then it will eventually reflect on the media, I think. So Emma, can you tell us about the racism in Mexico?
That's a good question. Let's see what I have seen, which is like not that much because I don't leave my house or watch news. But what I have seen is like we know that we have the Nigerians who are living here and they're all like in their own little community. I know that they're hanging out together. Huh?
I didn't know there are Nigerians here.
Not
cool.
Nigerians. Why did I say Nigerians?
Haitians.
Ah,
okay. There are Nigerians here too.
It's a nicer word to say. It comes out of the mouth easier. But we have them, and then I know we do have a little Chinese community somewhere in El Centro. It's and I think those are the only two like big like ethnic communities are those ones, and then everybody else is just American or.
There are Russians here too.
Yes.
Yeah, there are.
There are Russians here too.
I have a Russian student, and she told me that she hangs out with Russian people here. So I'm of the impression that there are a few Russians here.
Yes.
Well, yeah, there's a few. I remember one of my teachers at university was from that area, but at least back then there was like not a notable amount of them. And like what I have seen, like obviously the people who are of Asian descent are the ones who are working at like Chinese food places and the Japanese food places, stuff like that. And the Haitians, I see them mostly they're where are they working, most of them?
I've seen some of them working in restaurants.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of restaurants.
They have their own like eateries, and I've also seen them work with the Chinese community when it comes to running those little shops and eateries that they have.
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of like.
These are you can see them in around Centro, like it's also also a little bit of Boulevard Agua Caliente, so that area you'll be able to see them.
Yeah, they're mostly
working together.
Here where I live, I saw 2 Haitians yesterday, and I was like, oh, look at that.
Look at that.
You have changed my normal view of the color of people that I see. Thank you for that. You know, it's like in this area we're mostly like Mexicans on the lighter color for some reason. Like that's just the type of people that live in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you want to see the most diversity, you have to go to like Centro, Agua Caliente, maybe Rio. I'm not sure about Playas. I haven't been there in a really long time, so I don't know
Playas is full of Americans.
Yeah, it's all, I know that's where all the Americans live.
Playas, Playas de Tijuana and Rosarito, those areas are just full of Americans.
Full of Americans, yeah.
White Americans especially.
Yeah, because you know it's a tourist area, so that's where they are.
Yeah.
And so, like, actually seeing like racism in like plain view, I haven't, but I've like seen it subtly, as Mark was saying.
Yeah, like, you know,
little things, right?
I was actually curious about like how Mexico talks about people of color. How do they perceive them? Exactly, right?
Like it doesn't come up, but it also doesn't come up in either a negative way or in a positive way, really. Like they're just there, and that's basically the attitude of Mexico as a whole. Like they're just there. Like life is just exists.
What I have noticed, the difference between the, let's say, racism in India and Mexico, I haven't heard, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't heard Black people being persecuted violently in Mexico.
Yeah, in Mexico. Like, I've
never heard of it.
Yeah,
in India, Black people have been persecuted violently, that they have been attacked by the police. But I haven't heard that in Mexico.
I mean, the police attack everybody in Mexico, so honestly, who knows?
I think it's interesting because I consider Mexico to be a country that is very welcoming to everybody. Mm-hmm. They always have their arms wide open, you know. And so I think because of their culture and who they are as a people, they're more willing to stand on the side and look at you being obviously different and from somewhere else to feed you out, and then, hey, let's go have a taco, let's hang out. Where are you from? I want to know about you and your culture. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that they haven't got an opinion, though. Doesn't mean they haven't got an opinion. That's probably just mere curiosity, and that's how I feel. Mm-hmm. And how do I know they might have an underlying opinion that you don't hear is just by how you see the subtle reactions every day. I go into the Starbucks in Playas, and on several occasions, they'll move their handbag from the edge of the desk to the inside, or from where they tend to hang it on the seat. And because I am about to pass, it's moved and put on the left side, closer to where the wall is. On a taxi where nobody sits next to you, for example, or next to me, how else? Yeah, I don't know if
it's not like physical aggression, but it's this silent treatment, you know, like this subtle treatment in a denigrating way.
I think you could call it. It's very passive aggressive in a way. You could call it.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
And also, how I know they have an underlying opinion is because I've been told on several occasions that I am expected to be dangerous and aggressive, violent. You know, and I normally get this out of a person after having 1, 2, or 3, 4 conversations, especially once they've gotten to know me or we've become friends, and they'll open up and they'll be like, you know what, this is the opinion I always had of your kind of people, you people, Black people. They normally they say people of color. Mm-hmm. And they'll say to me, oh, I was always told and I always thought that, you know, Black people are aggressive and dangerous, but you're not, you're different, you know, or you're cool. And then I'm like, no, I'm more like, yeah, I've heard that.
I think that comes from like a little bit of this thing that we do. It's an intersection, I think, between class and race. So I think when you see Black skin, people automatically assume that they are of lower class. They are
Yeah.
uneducated. They're poor. They're probably involved in some criminal activity because they're poor. So I think there is a disdain as a society for the poor, for the working class, and they associate that class with black skin. So what
On that point, I want to ask you both though, whenever, because you've been a teacher before, Emma, and you as well, Shinji, and when you used to tell people that you're a teacher, what do you get as a reaction? Because what I get as a
haven't gotten
reaction,
any bad reaction.
I
what I
usually
always
like your
get,
grandma.
I'm sorry?
I
Emma?
usually get like your grandma, because my grandmother is a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher. I have an aunt that's a teacher, another aunt that's a teacher, so it's like a family thing. So everyone's like, "Oh, you're like your grandma."
You know what I always get?
What?
Tijuana know who she is, so it's like, "Oh, you're like grandma."
You know what I always get? I get the
What?
shocked face. I get the kind of face and the reactions that like, what?
You-
Seriously? You? A teacher? Teacher of what? What do you teach? I teach English, French, and TOEFL.
They're like losing their
Wow.
minds.
Very good. How did you do that? How did you get that? Well, I went to college. And in Mexico, how did you get that job? Well, I applied and they hired me. Which school? Where? And it goes on and on. And this is what I get all the time. I'm like, at first I didn't realize what it could mean. But after a while, I started feeling like, would another person get these kind of questions though? With that kind of
Yeah.
reaction? And when
I have
when
gotten
I
a similar reaction, but not from everyone, when especially I think what people really get shocked about is the fact that I'm from India and I'm in Mexico. That's their most shocking point. They're like, why and how did this happen? Why did you choose Mexico? Like people are just losing their minds. Like, why this shithole? I don't know.
and I
Like
get
that's the
that.
vibe I'm getting.
I
That's
get
the
that.
vibe I always get.
After almost 4 years, that doesn't get old. It still happens to
Yep.
me.
Mhm.
I meet somebody, and another thing with the whole education thing, being a teacher, that I put in connection is even today when I still get new groups and new students, I always brace myself for the first week or first 2 weeks of being looked at and responded to in a not so favorable way, if I might put it that way. What I mean is, I've come to realize that people doubt my English and people doubt my expertise because I'm not the white American and because I'm from an island. And I find this out because normally it takes about 2 weeks for a class or a student to tell me, oh, something like, oh, when I just met you, I didn't even know Jamaica spoke English, or I didn't think your English would be as good, but wow, you speak really
Same.
good
I get that
English.
same
And a
thing.
lot of them will say to me as well that, in fact, you do sound pretty British, and I like it more than the American English. And I these days, I'm not sure if I should take that as flattery, but it still continues, and I expect it when I meet a new
Yeah.
student.
They're like, why? They're like, how is your English different? Like, you don't sound like other Indians, or like, I didn't know that people spoke English there. And I was like, girl, our Constitution is written in English. What are you talking about? So yeah, there's a lot of ignorance about, POC countries, I would say, about China, about the Caribbean, Africa, the whole continent, the Indian subcontinent. Like people have, and I understand why, because they weren't really taught about that, and the media doesn't help. The media is all about stereotypes. It's all about tokenism. Like you'll have this one Black person or one Indian person or one Mexican person, and they have this burden of representing the whole community. And a POC is not monolithic.
And
We
the
are
role in
not the
many
same. We are
cases
different
are
people.
and these roles in these movies where you speak of tokenism, in many cases they aren't even that great either. They either die first, or they're the
Yeah.
gangster, or they're fighting some abuse, or
Yeah,
they're
they're
the
usually
sidekick.
dismissible, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What were we
Yeah.
talking about? Oh, racism.
No.
Yes. Okay. So I was talking, I think, about the intersectionality of class and Black skin. And I wanted to also ask another intersectionality question. Is like, how can, because people of color are also racist or let's say discriminatory towards Black people, right? We talked about that in the beginning, like Asians being racist towards Black people, just like every other person of color, even Latinos, as we discussed, are racist towards Black people. Maybe not aggressively killing them. However, they still have these, they still objectify Black people. They still fetishize Black people, which makes them less than human. So what we are all trying to do, especially the Black Lives Matter movement, is to restore the perception of humanity on Black people. Black people are, of course, human beings, duh, it's not a question, but this perception needs to be universal. So my question, what I was asking is like, how can people of color show up for Black people? What would that look like to you, Mark?
How Black people can show up for.
No, how people of color can show up for Black people.
I feel like more can be said by those who are already in significant position and status in society. And I'm going to say more because I don't believe that they've all been silent, like the Oprahs and the Usain Bolts and the Tyler Perrys, just to name a few. The Rihannas.
But do you think are they doing justice to their communities?
Justice in what sense? Where the Black Lives Matter is concerned, or where their success is concerned? Because where the Black Lives Matter is concerned, I have seen one or two videos being placed, but I think it takes more than just a video whenever people get angry. Outside of that, you won't really see or hear them speak on the situation or the matter at hand. And I don't know, like
do you think the successful Black people in the media, are they amplifying Black voices, especially Black voices coming from poor communities?
No, not much. To be honest, I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Actually, I would agree.
Because what it seems like to me is it's not only, how racism, sexism, and all these identities that we have, which are valid identities, how they are all, mixed with this class struggle that I'm seeing recently. Like, people have been out on the streets protesting against millionaires and billionaires trying to interfere in politics, trying to interfere in people's daily lives, and people have been out on the streets since the beginning of this year. Recently now it's the Black Lives Matter movement, but since the beginning of this year, we have been fighting billionaires in a way. So we are in a way that we are fighting, the higher class, the elites, which they are, stamping on us. Their foot is on our neck in a way. And we can't breathe. And I feel like in that way, do you think that it's time to, like, all of us to really come together? Like, do you think that Black Lives Matter and, the working class movement, they should come together and really, do you see any connection here? Do you see the similarity here?
Yes, I think they should come together, especially because their nation is made up not only of whites, but there's a large Black community there, there's a large Latino community there, and there are others. I'm sure there's a large Asian community, but then, because the ones being ostracized are the Latinos and Black communities, they need to take that into account. It's one nation, it's one country, and then in their sphere, in the work area, what I'd hate to believe is because they've attained a certain status that they would consider themselves untouchable. You know, you're not untouchable, and especially for Black people and any Latino who've made it, and you think you're now untouchable. I think it would be a big mistake to consider yourself an untouchable, right?
Right.
Because you may never know what tomorrow looks like, and people easily get discarded just like that when you suddenly have nothing and you're left with this,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And then also a lot of us, we have some connection some way, somehow with somebody of color, as they like to put it, or a Latino, you know? So people need to put themselves in other people's shoes. In the first place, I don't understand how as human beings we could look at somebody else who speaks the same language, who has the same ability to achieve the same things that you're able to achieve and consider them an animal
Right.
or a second class citizen,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Yeah.
So coming back to what I asked before, like I think that's how I think we would like to conclude, Emma, if that's
Yeah.
some, or if you have like more questions you can ask. Like, how can people of color show up for Black people? How would that look like? So, Mark, like, what do you think? Like, your friends are white, they are brown, they're Latinos. What do you think? Like, how can they show up for the Black community?
Like the protests that are going on right now, and I have seen it that there are quite a few white people out and Latinos who are out accompanying Black people in their protests. That's a step,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a good sign. It's really nice to see that. I was surprised, and a few people have been saying, you know, it's a shock.
Mm-hmm.
One or two wouldn't be so much, but there've been quite a few. You know, that's one way. That's what's been done, and it's really good. You know, because I'm sure these people, white people who have showed up at these protests, they're doing it for a reason. It's either they have some sort of connection or spiritually they're at a place in their life where they realize that this is just stupid though. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's 2020, it's time for us to put our differences aside and work together. It's one human race.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And what do you think, Emma?
I think when it comes to like what people can do to, because the same as how it is that the racism is subtle, the changes have to be subtle as well and build time. So it would just basically be like recognize the privilege that you have, and if you see injustice happening, step in and do something about it.
With your privilege. Use your privilege.
Like use your privilege to stop it from happening. Like call out the person. You're like, hey, what the fuck are you think you can say that to them? Don't talk like that. We're in 2020. You shouldn't even know that word anymore. Like forget this word exists. And especially if you're white or white passing, it's like use the privilege that you have and the knowledge that you have to make the small changes. Like it's obviously not going to happen right away. It's going to take a really long time, more than likely. And it sadly, we won't see it in our generation, but as long as in the future, we know in our hearts that yes, the change will be for, if not my children, my grandchildren will at least live in a world where they get side-eyed for just because of the color of their skin. And if they do get side-eyed, they'd be like, you don't have the right to look at me like that anymore. Like I know for a fact that if I walk with my backpack into a store, nothing, like I'm not gonna get like all the eyes on me. I'll just be someone else walking into the store with their backpack. It's just the way life is.
Yes. So I think the action needs to be taken in this generation so that
it needs
the next generation does not have, anything of this
it
toxicity.
Needs to be a building, like it needs to build up. That's just the way that it is, like the exact same way that it built up to become what it is right now.
What it is right now.
In reverse.
I feel the conversation needs to be had between them as well. Okay, so for example, if you're white and you have a group of friends or people who the circle is just white and they seem not to care or realize what's happening in the world, and they might have a streak of racism in them that you might know for a fact, then you probably need to try and have the conversation with them, because what you find, so I think, is a lot of them or people like this think, okay, I'm in my own world, it doesn't affect me. So because it doesn't affect me, okay, so whatever, that's a
Mm-hmm.
problem. That's just there. It doesn't affect me, my pocket doesn't affect my household, doesn't affect my husband, my wife, my kids, so we just go home and we have a glass of wine and everything is perfect in my own little world. Okay, so fine, it doesn't affect you personally, but it's this is still, in their case, it's still America. It's one nation. You're all citizens of the United States, right? And again, you don't know what tomorrow holds. Put yourself in that person's shoe.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And I think also we have to remember to accept the help, because I think it has happened quite a few times where it's like the non-person of color is trying to help, and then the people of color are like, what, this isn't your fight or whatever. It's accept the help,
Yes, I
right?
think,
Accept
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
100%. I think we should exclude everybody in the fight who wants to be in the fight, and we cannot be like, this is not your fight. I mean, we need our allies. This is my opinion. We
It's
need our
everybody
allies of
in the
whichever
end.
skin color, of every gender, of every identity possible. I think we all need to come together. I think that's what we were talking about too. Like, we need to show up for Black people. We absolutely do, and it doesn't matter who it is. And we should not be pushing people out who are trying to help. This is my opinion, 100%. Because one community alone will not be able to dismantle anything.
No.
It has to be a collected effort of everybody who has felt oppressed in the system, for everybody that the system is not working for, including our LGBTQ friends, our community, our POC community, the Black community, the working class community, people on the far left. We all need to really, really come together and fight the system. The system is our common enemy. So instead of saying this is not your fight because of your skin color, I don't think that's a wise thing to do.
No, not at all.
It'd be a hard fight.
Against white people. It's us against the racists, whoever they happen to be, whatever color they come in, whatever ethnicity they come from. It's all of us against the racist people, period.
The system. And I think sometimes we get a little distracted with our identities, right? I'm saying, I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's identity. I am bisexual. I'm a person of color. I'm a woman. I have all these labels that I can, use to, I don't know, I guess, identify myself. I think that our identities are good and valid. It really helps us to understand who we are socially, culturally, politically. That's good. But I think sometimes our identities can take us away from who the actual enemy is. And I feel like the enemy is not white people. The enemy is not men. The enemy is not these, these other antagonist labels that we have. It's the system. And the system is made up of rich, powerful people who will not even think twice about anything else apart from their own preservation. They will not think about the environment. They'll not think about the working class. They'll not think about anything. As long as they can exercise their power with the help of money, they'll keep doing it. And I feel like this is the system we are all fighting against, with whether that's through Black Lives Matter, whether that's the far right communist movement or socialist movement. We are all fighting that class, that system.
Yeah, I'm just curious though, to what end is this fight for self-preservation?
That's a very good question.
People, to what end might it be though?
What do you think? Where are we heading towards?
The money? Could it just be for the money?
Like are you saying the people who are oppressing, the powerful and the elite?
Mm-hmm. Or could it be that there's a plan that
It's
one
power.
there is just people who look
It's
like
power
themselves?
because they don't want to distribute that power. They want to keep that power all to themselves so that they can do whatever they want.
Basically,
they want to be on the top of the food chain.
Yeah,
that's what they want.
Like when you think about it, like the higher up you go, the more they let you do whatever you want, and people like that feeling, I guess.
Yeah, of course they do. I mean, that's a trip. We have a term also called power.
It's a high.
Yeah, it's a high, and that can only happen if they can trample on someone else, on a community or several communities, and that's what we are fighting against. We want, at least I want, to see a classless society where we are living, because I feel like humankind, we are so skilled, we are so talented, we have so many languages, we can change the environment with our actions, and we've gone to the moon and Mars, and we are so talented, like, to put it simply. And I refuse to believe that we cannot have a classless society where people can have a comfortable living. I refuse to believe that it's not possible. Like, whenever you talk about this, they'll be like, it's not possible. This is the only system that works. And I'm like, really? Really? We've gone to the moon. We've gone to Mars. We are changing the environment just with our actions. And you're saying that we cannot have a system that works for everyone. Like, I refuse to believe that. And I think people want us to believe that it's not going to work, so that they can be on top of the food chain and they can keep eating us.
Yeah, it's sad to think the more we achieve, the more ignorant and more oppressive we become, right?
Yeah. Because we realize, like, people who get to the top of the food chain, you know, the presidents and the rich, they're like, dude, I have all of this, and the only way I got this, they know that subconsciously, right, is because I took from others, you know? Without taking from others, I cannot have this power that I have. And if I need to give them the part of my power, I'm losing it. And I don't want to lose that, because this feels amazing. I am powerful. I am untouchable. I am invincible. And they don't want to feel anything less of that. And that's why privileged people feel oppressed when they are asked to share their privilege. It feels like oppression, you know? Like, you've been so privileged all your life with wealth, with the color of your skin, that when people are like, hey, don't say the N-word, you're like, oh, you're oppressing me. We just asked you not to say the N-word.
That's it.
We just asked you to pay your due share of your taxes. That's all we said. We didn't say, give away your money, give away everything. We just said, hey, pay your taxes. You are oppressing me. I do so much for society. Yeah, you evade taxes. You don't do anything for society. You know, so you ask them to do their bit as a citizen of the nation, of the world, and they feel oppressed.
Challenge and oppressed, right?
Yeah.
Here we are in 2020.
Astrologically, we are going through a huge transformation right now, and more is coming in 2024. Yes. I mean, it's good. Like, it's going to be painful for a bit. Like, we'll see a lot of protests, riots, like empires falling, new empires rising. So that's happening.
That recently. New empires rising and old ones falling.
Yes, China is rising. You will see that America is already started falling. We'll see what happens to that. New systems are coming, and we will be able to see that in full force in 2024 onwards. I mean, it's just we'll get a glimpse of it this year and in the next year, but the full force is coming in 2024. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a big change that's happening.
Yeah, something we have to adapt to.
Yep.
Brace ourselves for and adapt to.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, hopefully We're all still
So,
alive for that.
do you have anything else to say, Emma, on Mark?
Not really.
Did you have any questions?
I mean, the one I had that I wanted to ask for a while, like, how have you felt oppressed in Mexico? Have you really? Is there anything that happens to you very often here that you can say, wow, I never expected this, but it is my reality because of what you look like?
I think what really bothers me, and this is not racism, I think it's just ignorance, that people, when I speak English, people can't accept it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They can't. It's like, why are you speaking English? Why? And sometimes it's because, I mean, I think most of the time they think it's because I'm a Latina and I am speaking English to put them down or to be posh or to be, I don't know, extra.
Mm-hmm.
And that really bothers me. It really does. And it has always bothered me back in India too. I spoke English, like especially, I mean, as I was telling you, there are so many languages spoken in India. It's not possible to learn all of them. So you just kind of like know the main ones, your mother tongue and the language of the movies, which is Hindi, and English, of course, because that's taught to you. And whenever I spoke English, because I don't know, I just feel comfortable in it. It's something that I think in for whatever reason. And people just get so offended by it. And that does not happen so much if Jesus speaks English. I don't see that. I don't see that flinch, you know, which I see when I speak English.
Uh-huh.
So people in Mexico, when they see Jesus speaking English, they're like, oh, okay, cool. But when I speak English, like, how dare you? Oh, by the way, Jesus is my boyfriend and he's white passing. So, yeah.
White passing. No.
Yeah, he's white passing. He's very white.
He's very.
It's
Yes.
very white.
So yeah, that's what like has always bothered me, and I think that I have to live with it for the rest of my life because, and I think it's because I'm brown. I think I was called Oaxaqueña by someone, and I was like, oh, really? I mean, I didn't think of anything as bad. I was just like, oh, people think that I'm from the South. That's cool, you know, like, oh, interesting, you know, like exotic. And I was like thinking of it that way. But then later I learned that it was probably not a compliment. It was probably not like, oh, Oaxaqueña. It was more like, Oaxaqueña. So I'm like, well, I didn't perceive it that way. So whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's always there in Mexico for my brown skin. Like, for me to appear high class is, you know, audacious. Like, why are you speaking English? That's like very offensive to Mexicans who think that I'm Latina.
Wow.
That's so
Yes,
weird.
we all have our fights, right?
Yes. Also, this is everywhere pretty much except the US. In India and Mexico, I am not considered conventional beauty. They wouldn't, because of this color of my skin, because, you know, I have a big nose and big lips. So it's not conventional. I'm not saying that I didn't get attention or that people did not consider me pretty. They did, they still do, but it was just not conventional. And I always used to hear that. I don't know if I've ever, you know, spoken about this out loud, but there was a time when I was in the entertainment industry and I used to get this a lot, like, oh, you cannot get the role of the main of the heroine or the protagonist. It's like, because of my skin color, it was the best friend, or it was the vamp, the anti-hero. It was negative. The perception was negative. Like, I'm hot, but you wouldn't take me to your mom. You know? So I was very sexualized because of I am very sexualized because of my skin color. It's exotic. You want to have sex with me, but do you want to marry me? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I don't normally understand it straight out, but I'm normally told that that's the reason when I ask. Hmm.
Yeah.
What
So
about
a
you,
lot of
Emma?
I've always received that fetishization.
Has anything ever happened to you here, Emma? That's like, what?
Um,
Maybe in the States, no, Emma?
I grew up in the U.S. and in a really tiny town where we had like a lot of like we lived in prominently white area and we had a very small Latina community that we would hang out with, which I didn't like because I didn't speak Spanish, so and I don't know, like I never. The thing is, where I lived, there really wasn't variety. But we're also talking about back in like the 90s, early 2000s. So there wasn't a variety of people to see. Like because in my area there were a decent amount of like Mexican kids, so there were like they were just other kids, I think I saw like one black kid in my entire existence when I was living there. One.
Wow.
Just one. And he's the only one I ever saw, and I do not remember where I saw him, but I remember seeing just one. and then when I got here to Mexico, I was treated a lot like I didn't know anything because I didn't speak Spanish. And also because my Spanish is very American. And so it's like they don't think I know what I'm talking about because I have such an American accent when I speak English. And I'm like, I can't help the way I speak I speak Spanish. And I'm like,
my Spanish is very American too. Like when I speak Spanish, like, people are always like, "You're from the States, aren't you?" I'm like,
no, it's just how I learned it.
Yeah.
It's like Spanish is hard, okay? It's like, and like, so like that's the only thing I noticed. But I do like, like most Mexicans, you live with the fear of the drug dealers and the gangs and all of that. And being a very small person, it's like, well, I'm easy to kidnap, so
like, yeah, they can just tuck you in.
You're like, okay, so I have to make sure that I dress like I'm poor, so no one wants to kidnap me. If I'm looking to buy a car, I have to make sure it
looks. That's very Tijuanense to act poor.
Act poor so that they don't want to kidnap you and take the money you don't have.
Wow. Like, I wish I could lend you my color, Emma. They'd stay far away from you.
Yeah.
You can borrow it some days.
So weird. Like just thinking of me being the height I am and also being black. This tiny little itty bitty black woman would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Like just
I feel like our oppression stories got lighter from Mark. Like Mark was the most intense. Mine was a little less. And then you were like, have I been oppressed? Tell me.
Tell me, I don't pay attention.
I try not to talk about it too much. I have told things to Shinjini and Dora and my few friends here. But it's something I'm very conscious about when it comes to speaking about it, because I would hate to be pitied by everyone and anybody.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And second, I don't want to come off as a complainer. And even though I think my friends would understand the reason and what's happening, I still don't want to be the first thing you see when you see me is, oh my God, poor thing, So I try to control. There are days where things just happen and you just would really want to talk about it and just get it out. but you just try to control it. Yeah.
This sucks. Like this constant struggle. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to I want to talk about the issues, but I don't want to be pitied. Like why do just going through this? I can't imagine. Like it sounds horrible, honestly.
But yeah, it's a fact, like, and I was telling my director recently, I really don't appreciate when I go to a store, I need something and somebody doesn't know the answer or has the thing, and they try to ask another colleague, and you're like, hay un moreno aquí que quiere saber si no sé qué. And the thing is, in Jamaica, we don't do that. In Jamaica, when you meet someone for the first time, or especially in business, you address them with ma'am or sir. That's how we
Mm,
my country.
yes.
But here they address me as hay un negrito, hay un moreno, hay un grandote, hay un no sé qué, o muchacho. But I don't know, like the moreno
I
and
get
negrito for
the
me,
morena
like,
too. I get the
uh-huh.
morena a lot.
And people have explained to me that it's how do you say, una forma cariñosa para referirse a alguien, a nice way to refer to
It's form
someone.
of endearment.
Uh-huh.
It would be.
And that's fine, right? I'm not throwing it out and say that they shouldn't use it or don't call me so. But my problem is when you just meet me, and it happens all the time. Like someone hits me up online, and they're like, "Hola Moreno, ¿qué tal? No sé qué." Or in a store, like I told you, they're trying to get someone's attention because they don't know the answer to something or where something is, and they
But
they
people
refer
call
to
you
me.
negrito or negrote.
No, actually, they say negrito, but I could see
They
why they would
do.
say negrito. But I've never heard that one before.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Big black person.
Big black man.
So yeah, I get it. People have explained to me. People said to me, "Do not be offended. It's a Mexican way, a very Mexican way to, to show affection to someone." And I'm like, yeah, I
That's
get your
true.
culture, but where I'm from, it's just weird, After
Yeah,
we're
they
friends,
call their like lovers gordito or
Mhm.
gordo, and I'm like, why? He's not even fat. What are you talking about?
I know.
But yeah, it's gordo or gordito, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me at all. It's like if somebody called me a gordita, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, bitch.
But that I can get. That I can get. Like it doesn't make sense to me either. But I can get that. My hiccup is you
Yeah,
just get me.
I think
You
it's
just
like that. It's like calling somebody gordita or
Because for
gordito.
me, it's like you see my color first before you ask me my name. That's how I interpret it.
Ah, okay.
Emma,
Yeah,
you
that
were
makes
saying,
sense.
Emma?
I think because it's like a very Mexican thing that you identify someone by like the first thing that you notice when you
That's what I heard.
saw them. So
Mhm.
it's like I'll use an example of like our neighbors. So when my husband grew up in this exact apartment where I live, and so next door he had friends, these two kids. And so one was a little chubbier and one was like skinnier. And so era el gordo y el flaco, right? And that name is still on them, even though it's reversed, that now the other one is fat and the other one is skinny.
Right,
So
right.
he's still flaco, even
So
though he's
there's a
fat.
flip.
And he's still gordo, even though he's thin. And it's like the Mexican habit of like just giving everybody like a nickname. It's weird to me as well.
I think it's the culture is very teasing. Like
it is like
it's like they show their love by teasing you, and that's not okay with me. By the way, this is not okay with me.
Pay attention. Like it's just the way that they are for some reason. I have not figured it out, but it's like when it comes to at least Mexican like men, if they can't tease you to a point where you get slightly offended, you're not really friends.
Yeah. That's what I have noticed.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I don't understand it. I don't know why.
Yeah, me neither. And I'm like, why are you bullying this poor person? You're not bullying him. You're just, that's how we show our love. And I was like,
love him. And it's like, I don't get it.
Love is weird.
I'm just looking at us three foreigners not understanding it. Obviously.
We're like, we don't understand why. But this is the way they are. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
I
it's
don't
very
get
My
it
confusing.
friend
either.
just told me, he said it's not so much like in like the circles of like female friends. I mean, it is, but not so much. It's because, you know,
Oh
like
yeah, right? It's not so much among female friends, is it?
then maybe you'll be like, maybe you'll call her gordita sometimes, but that's when, you know, she's kind of being chubby that day, perhaps.
Oh my
But
God.
but usually
They,
it's not the way it is. But with men, it's like automatically, "Ay, cómo estás gordo?" It's
Yeah.
"¿Cómo estás?" You know, that kind of stuff. You're like, they use like physical identifiers.
Mm,
and I think it starts
I
from
don't
the
know.
kids though, because now that you mentioned this, I'm realizing it's just my male students, the little kids, that do that, and they do it
Yeah,
with
kids do that a
all
lot.
the ease in the world. The girls, I don't recall the girls doing it, but the boys
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
You're right.
It's the boys, and these are
I
what
think I
I
think
remember
I
when I
what
was
I have
9 years
seen
old. He does
is
it all the
that
time.
girls call each other like these they have these other names which are not derogatory. They're more like uplifting. Not uplifting, sorry. No, it's like I don't know, like Mama Chula or Mama Sita. Like they would call each
Oh,
other that.
those kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, mi
But
amor.
it's
They're like, mi amor,
uh-huh,
¿cómo estás, chula? ¿Cómo
uh-huh.
estás? Blah, blah,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's like pretty, you know, like
I find
everybody's calling each other
that
pretty and hot and but among girls, but not among
it
guys.
makes
Among
me
guys,
more
it's like
uncomfortable.
you're an idiot or you're fucking stupid or I don't
Uh-huh.
know. That's what I've
What's
seen.
up, you idiot? Like, I haven't seen you in forever, you whatever they want to use.
Yeah.
This is something to look into. Yeah. Now that you mention it, it's true. It is true.
I think if a guy would call his guy friend, I don't know, something nice, that would be gay in
Yeah,
Mexican
like
culture.
Is
if
that so in
oh,
Mexico too?
yeah, like if a guy friend is called el guapo, he's usually the gay friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's very
Mm.
toxic.
Hold on,
But yeah,
Emma. So you're saying that's a thing? Oh,
Yeah, it
what's the
is.
scenario that okay, so there are two guys who are friends and they're referring to a third person as El Guapo?
And usually that guy is gay.
So
yeah,
is there a way of saying, okay, he's our friend, but he's gay, so we call him El
yeah.
Guapo?
Yeah,
That's it, Emma? Really?
usually.
Or if
Wow.
the gay person who is calling, like if the gay, like a straight person saying, "¿Cómo estás, guapo?" It will be like, "Excuse me, what is wrong with you? Are you like
Uh-huh.
hitting on me or something?"
Yeah.
Man,
That's
I
how
wish you
they
were
would
that
react.
nice, but okay.
Yeah. You
Yes.
can't be nice to your friends. It's just
Yeah,
not
you
the way
cannot
it
be
is.
nice as a man. You cannot be nice to your friend. Like if you want to prove that you're straight, you have to be as humiliating as possible. That's how you prove you're a straight guy and you have no homo feelings.
No homophilia.
It makes sense.
Yes.
Uh,
And
yeah,
then it's
machismo
weird.
is just weird, man.
I mean, I
Wow.
don't know. I think if I were a guy, probably I would be a bisexual guy too, but I wouldn't like it if my friends were constantly like, hello, foolish, idiot, stupid motherfucker. I'd be like, excuse me,
How you
talk to me
doing,
respectfully.
motherfucker? 'Cause I'm
Well,
trying
Yeah,
you
to.
know
like,
what?
calm down.
You're also not a guy, so you may never know.
Yeah, yeah, I would never know.
It's like
As
we
humans, what
were
I've
like
realized is that we're just
raised, man.
complex.
Like so, it's like we wouldn't.
We're emotionally complex humans.
We are.
Very complex.
I want to touch upon a sensitive topic, and this is directed towards Mark.
Oh, por Dios.
I recently saw this video, which was, I think, in the States. A group of black men were beating up a black trans woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that a lot in the POC communities than I see in white communities. I might be wrong.
I
What
was
do you
gonna
think
mention
about
that.
that?
I was gonna mention that like way a few minutes ago, but I didn't want to take away from what the topic really
Yeah,
was.
I know.
It
But now I
is,
think
yeah.
we've talked about BLM.
No, it's fine. I mean, it is a fact. It is a conversation that's being had, and even with all that's happening in the world now, I'm a part of particular groups like on WhatsApps and Facebook, and that question, that topic has been brought up, in a sense of, well, here we are all out for one cause, but within the same group and the cause that we're fighting for are people oppressing themselves. And if you take it down to one particular group, which is, let's say, for example, the Black gay community, who are all fighting to be accepted because of their color, but within that group, you oppress somebody else for being a cross-dresser, oppress somebody else for being trans, oppress somebody else because he's too feminine. That's a big deal, whether you like to believe it or not. Because he's a little bit more feminine than you, okay, so he's wrong.
Where is this coming from?
Like it's just stupid. It's controversial. It has to do more with masculinity and being a man, being masculine, and you realize it's not just reserved for the straight community or people outside of the Black gay community or the gay community in general. It's just something that spans right across. If we think about Mexico, machismo, you call it, it's just there. It's just driven within human nature for some reason for centuries, So it's just there. It's just there. The guy
I think homophobia is a kind of sexism.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, why does acting like a woman so offensive? What is so wrong about acting like a woman? What is wrong with femininity?
And femininity is wrong and weak.
Yeah. Femininity is instantly equal to weakness and vulnerability, and definitely not manly. And it's just, but why would I mean, if men are so strong, okay, let's say it, they're stronger, whatever, why do they need to beat up a Black trans woman? I just don't get it. Why do they need to kill trans people? And I'm talking about all men. This is not about a color thing at all. Like, why are men killing trans people? It's just, I don't get it. Like, you are strong. Like, leave them alone. They want to be, they are women. They identify themselves as women. I don't see what the problem is with, in the masculine community. Like, you are masculine, and if you're masculine enough, you shouldn't be bothered.
I think it's just how they were socialized. I think it's ignorance. I think it's hate on one hand, if not, or possibly it's put together with ignorance and how you're socialized, what you grew up being taught, what you heard, little ideas about people who are deemed different from you being thrown around society. Because at the end of the day, like, what you find is a lot of these people do it with the Bible in their mouths, but you won't catch them on a Sunday in church or in any other situation. Nobody gives a damn about the Bible, but all of a sudden you use the Bible against somebody else.
It makes no sense to me. I'm sorry, because people of color, with all their religion,
when you kill this person, what do you gain? Like, it's not like
exactly. What is the threat? I don't understand. Why do you need to beat a trans woman? What is the threat from a trans woman coming?
Like, show me that significant purpose, that significant reason, that significant reason for which you needed to kill this person. How does it affect you? How does it make you more successful or better than the day before? And you'll probably just hear that a man should not be dressed like that, and that's it, full stop.
I have also heard that they feel threatened because they think trans women are trying to trick straight men into having sex with them.
I think that's an excuse. A big excuse.
Obviously.
In most cases, I don't think you would sleep with that trans person if you really don't want to.
Exactly.
I don't think so. And I don't think most trans women are really interested in converting the world, in converting all these
Not
men.
at all. I think trans women just want to be considered human beings. That's all they want. I don't think they want to be considered superior. They just want to be considered human beings. And I think we are not even offering that to them.
I think it's all just an excuse.
I feel like people who are overtly homophobic or overtly transphobic, like going out of their way to be like that, I feel like there's something inside them that they're repressing.
I've always heard that.
Like,
Yeah.
why do you care so much about what other people are doing with their bodies?
I've
What
only
does
had
that
one
say about you?
experience. I've only had one experience where that's concerned until this day. It still shocks me. But to say that it's the case with everyone, I'm not sure. But I've always heard that. I've only proven it once, but yeah.
What happened?
I mean, when I was in college, there was a dude that started right after me, and he was super homophobic towards me and my friends. You know, to the extent where you're just walking along the halls or along the corridors and the buildings, and he makes a shift from the left to the right, giving you way, but in a scornful way, like here comes the
Mm-hmm.
fat, give him way,
Mm-hmm.
or and then he'll, hers little homophobic slurs and so on, towards us. And that went on for quite a while. And I remember his second year, yeah, I do remember. Actually, I was listening to a song that was a hit at the time. And he came up to my computer because we were in the computer lab. And he said, "That's a good song." And I'm here like, me? Are you talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. But that was it. And I do remember a few days later, I don't remember how we ended up there, but his tongue was down my throat.
Oh.
It was outside the library on the upstairs where no one was there and the lights just went off. So it had to have been around 11 or 12 p.m. that night. And I was in the same area and he was in the same area and he approached me. And one thing led to another, his tongue was down my throat. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
we've been friends ever since. He apologized.
Right,
We
of
was
course.
just today, and this was about 8 or 9 years ago, and we're still good friends. He apologized for how he behaved and saying, that he just didn't know how to deal with all of it. Oh, and also because
Yeah.
he needed to appear to the other guys because he was on the football team. He needed to appear to all the other guys that
Mm-hmm.
that he was one of them, and he
Makes
doesn't
sense.
support the whole idea of being gay and so on. So for me, I just see him as somebody who didn't have balls. But
I mean, yeah, that's also true, but I'm glad that he faced his fear of accepting himself as who he is. I'm glad he did that. Better late than never. But I feel like people who still hold on to their homophobia and transphobia, it's like, what are you hiding? Because it really sparks my curiosity. I feel like it's more about that person than it is about this other gay or trans person.
my question is always, what do you gain though? Because that's a lot of energy to
Yeah.
carry all this hate and to go to the extent
Exactly.
of
So
taking a
why would
minute
somebody
to give
spend
their
so much of
attention.
energy if it doesn't concern them?
hmm That's a conversation that needs to be had these days because I don't think it's been had enough. Because if it were, it would probably bother a lot of them. If we shift the idea from, okay, so they're being abused because of their sexuality, to the one who's doing the abusing probably has some internal issues going on, some battles going on. What's the deal?
Yeah, maybe they have been made to feel dirty or, or bad because they've
hmm
had homosexual feelings. And not every person who has homosexual feelings are gay, they're bisexual. So I think it's harder for these closeted bisexuals to accept that they have homosexual feelings more than completely gay people, people who are mostly homosexual or completely homosexual. So I really think that we need to have a conversation about sexuality and how it is on a spectrum.
hmm
Yeah.
And that you
So,
might change your mind, and not change your mind, but you can be so many things. You do not have to be this one thing. Or you can be that one thing, but it doesn't make you bad or good
all
necessarily.
this oppression in the world feels like a never-ending struggle, though, a never-ending fight. And I can definitely see why some people have given up or have considered giving up or are considering giving up, because it just seems like there's always something else. We might get rid of this problem today, but as humans, tomorrow we find something else. There's
Oh
just
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
need
definitely.
to put something and someone else down.
It's an ongoing, yeah, because we want to feel powerful, and the only way we feel powerful is when we put people down.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And,
down.
and I'm not saying that to discourage or to say, like, okay, maybe we should just give up and just let things be. No, that's also what makes us human, that we always
Exactly.
feel like we need to see a problem and find a solution. That's what we're good at.
How I see it is that we as humanity, we are perfecting our species. I think I see it as that. The more struggles we face, the more polished we are becoming as a species. And I think we are meant to do great things. We already have done so many great things. In the last 200-300 years, we have eradicated so many diseases, from the face of the earth. I mean, that's just one of those examples. And a lot of other good things have happened, like giving women their due. We've come a long way from that. People are finally, being held accountable for their crimes against women. I mean, it's still a struggle, of course, but things are changing, things are happening. And I feel that with these struggles and with these movements, we will be perfecting ourselves as a species, spiritually speaking.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the protests are important, especially because when you mentioned perfecting our species, I kind of feel like to begin with, we complicated it ourselves. Because when you look at kids, babies, children, toddlers, who one is white and one is black, they don't think race. They're always happy to play with each other.
Yep.
They're always happy to hug and consider the other. But the problem,
unless they have heard the parents say something otherwise.
Exactly. Socialization. So I think in the first place, we have complicated things. And that is why these protests especially are important, to remind people that, hey, we don't have to be like this, though.
Exactly. And this is
Because
not
we're not
okay.
like that way naturally.
This is not okay to kill people just for breathing. Yeah. It's not okay.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. I think that's the end of our video today.
Yes. So like everybody else, we're going to have a whole bunch of links in our description to, the petitions you can sign, the websites you can visit, the videos you can watch, and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have that. And I mean,
yes, we will be, I think we can also try speaking to other people too. Like maybe we can have more people in the conversation. We'll do that later. We'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it was amazing having you, Mark. Like your perspective is so unique to this, and we've learned a lot today. What I wanted to learn was like how I can support my friends, my Black friends, and how as a community we can show up for our Black communities everywhere around the world. And I think I've definitely learned. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
How do we end this?
I don't know. How do we end this?
You can't just say bye together.
Yeah,
no,
we're just gonna say bye.
Okay then. So
that brings us to the end of our episode, and I feel like we had a good conversation, and I believe that you're probably just as drained as I am.
We all are.
Just drained all the time right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about avoiding social media 100%.
Me too.
But I'm like, I can't do that. There's stuff I want to look at. That's us. We're too sensitive. So, thank you everybody for watching and for listening to us. And we wish you all of the luck and whatever situation you're in right now. So, as we say every single week, I do not discriminate against you.
And you do not discriminate against me.
And we'll see everybody next time.
Yes. Bye.